My name is Michael O'Mara. I am a co-host of Kutztown-Live. I'm also the president of Kutztown University Radio, and we have a very special guest, Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, Mike.
Who are you, Kimberly? Why should we be listening to Kimberly here at KUR?
I am the executive director of the Alliance of People with Disabilities, and that is an independent living center that operates in King County, Washington, the other Washington over on the Pacific Coast.
Yeah, one people forget, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and one question when I read that title, what is defined as disability?
A disability, according to the ADA, is actually anything that impacts an individual's ability to perform a daily task. So that could be something simple as eating, bathing, learning, listening, looking, touching, feeling. And a lot of people actually have disabilities and they don't really actually think about that they have them. There's several times that I'll talk to somebody and they'll say, well, I don't have a disability. And then I'll get to know them a little bit better. And I'll be like, well, you have a disability. And they're not really aware of it. Reality-wise is that disability actually is the impact a condition actually has on somebody's interaction with their environment. And so disability is not necessarily the condition. So somebody could have cerebral palsy or have a learning disability, but it's not the actual physical problem that the person has. It's the interaction with their environment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a really unique way to put it. I like when I was on the website a little bit. It's disabilities.
Yes.
And uppercase is the A to inform you that this really isn't a hindrance. It's really a way. Right. It's really a way to. It's a unique. I don't want to say identify, but it's just a unique way to say, look, I have this. It's part of my life, and I'm going to own it. I really enjoy that perspective. Yeah,
exactly. Disability is not something to be afraid of. It's not something to hide behind. It just means that you may not be able to do something exactly the same as somebody else. And disability rights and advocacy is that same way. It just means that we're just trying to make sure that people with disabilities have the same opportunities that everybody else has. You know, all too often it gets caught up into a situation that people think that, advocating for disabilities means we're trying to give special preference or something like that to a person with a disability, but really we're not. You know, just because an individual has to do something different, it doesn't mean that they're getting something better than you.
Yeah. That's an interesting point because you have the people. Privilege is a thing. It exists. It's very tangible. It affects everything around us. However, people aren't necessarily aware. They don't really consider that aspect, and they don't really consider someone else's perspective and how they're dealing with something that they might struggle with. What's like a tactic that you use other than advocating very, very well right there to inform?
Well, really, that's the biggest thing is actually advocacy because, there are several types of, I remember when I was in grade school and we had a week-long presentation that, we got to ride around in wheelchairs and use canes and wear blindfolds and earmuffs and all that kind of stuff. And, several types of organizations use those methods to try and teach people what it's like to live with a disability. And really, it's not because
it sounds like you're playing with a disability.
It is. And, there's an example that for people to try and understand what it's like to be blind, that they'll blindfold somebody and say, okay, well, here, now try and do this. And the individual's not able to do this or whatever task is presented before them. And so then, they take off the blindfold and everybody's like, okay, well, now you know what it's like to be blind. No, you don't. You have no clue what it's like to be blind. You have no clue what it's like to be living with the disability that individual has unless you actually are living it and experiencing it. And so advocacy is the best way to be able to explain to somebody the impact how certain decisions have and policies and rules and regulations have on every type of disability. The Alliance doesn't focus on one type of disability in any specific way. We're cross disability, and so it means we work for people with all disabilities. It doesn't matter what your disability is. We advocate for the rights of you as an individual as well as the disability community as a whole.
So do you suggest advocacy? Do you suggest having people scratch the surface of the perspective of living with a disability? do you suggest that's the best way to empathize with the person that they're communicating with, or is there something better that you could think of?
I don't know that it's necessarily empathy that people with disabilities want. We want recognition that we are people as well. And when I say we, I mean, I have a disability as well, but most people wouldn't actually notice that. I mean, regardless of the fact that you can't see me and all you can hear is my voice, my disability isn't a visual disability. And so you may not know that the person sitting next to you has a disability. Again, like I said earlier, they may not know that they have one. They might not identify as a person with a disability. And so it's not necessarily empathy and really, in all honesty, not sympathy either that we're looking for. It's a matter of civil rights. And again, having the same rights as every other individual. If we want to go to a movie theater, we want to be able to get into the doors. We want to be able to interact with it as best as we possibly can with whatever methods, which is why, there's audio description nowadays in movie theaters, the closed captioning for people who are hearing impaired. There's so many different alternatives to be able to make things accessible for people. I guess one of the things that an individual can do is to understand that those things aren't something that's supposed to be a negative for people without disabilities. So if you sit down and watch a movie with audio description, don't get annoyed that somebody might talk a little bit over, some of the action scenes. If you see the words printed across the bottom of a television screen, don't get annoyed that they're blocking the view. If you
be considerate.
Yeah, it's all about equal access. And it's less about empathy and sympathy and walking a mile in our shoes. It's not what we ask. We just ask you to understand that we want to be able to do everything that a person without a disability can.
And you'll say, and I'm already not you. I'm hearing the critics in my head. Oh, but they can. We didn't say they couldn't. You'll hear that people that don't consider a wide swath of disabilities as disabilities. You see that same argument a lot with different subjects that are politically or culturally divisive. Oh, we didn't say that. Oh, you're just introducing all these new things that I don't understand. That means it's not valid. I see that perspective, and it's a shame because society, culture itself, it's not just one person. It's not just two people. It's a collective.
Exactly.
It's not even a melting pot anymore. They're calling it a mural, I think, is what the term they're using now.
Exactly.
It features so many different people, so many different perspectives, and if you just close yourself off to like 4 or 5 people that I agree with them, you failed. You failed.
Mm-hmm.
You got to really just put yourself out there, understand a little bit, and it really ties into, and correct me if I'm wrong, it really ties into this idea. It's a term non-persons. We feel you have a baby in the room, you kind of talk like they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
You have a service worker, a janitor, come in, clean something. Same thing. And that kind of, how you were explaining it made me think, I'm not saying there is or has to be people that think that way about people with disabilities, but if you have someone who's disabled in a room, not even disabled, someone that you might not agree with, someone you don't understand, and choose, it's better to just not deal with it. It's better just to move it in a corner and just, I'm focusing on what I got going on.
Right. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that popular culture does with people with disabilities. I mean, for example, if you need a person who is a person of color in a movie, they find a person of color.
Yeah,
if they need correct. If they need a person with a disability in a movie, they find an able-bodied person who can act like a disabled individual. If they need somebody in an ad or an advertisement, whether it be print or television media, they find a person who can sit in a wheelchair. They find the most unique thing that I actually was really excited about was the fact that the new Gerber baby actually has Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And so it's a move in popular media to not exclude people with disabilities from the whole presence. It's not like people with disabilities want to get out there and advertise and say, hey, look at me in my chair, or hey, look at me with my cane. It's just a matter, again, unfortunately, you where you talk about the fact that we put people in corners and we just tend to not ignore it, or tend to ignore it, is that if popular media and popular culture continue to do that for people with disabilities, then that's going to going to continue to be the way that things could end up going, because people of color, again, they are representing themselves. People of other ethnicities, whatever, people who are LGBTQ, they're recognizing themselves, they're acting themselves in the part. But people with disabilities, in most often, they're not a person with actual disability. And so it was really refreshing to see that, Gerber went and made that choice. There are some models nowadays who have disabilities. And so it's really refreshing to see those changes, because it means that popular culture and popular media are being able to say that we are people too. We're not somebody to be in that corner.
Correct me if I'm wrong. From your perspective, popular media is not just taking conscious caricatures of what they consider to be a general stereotype or a general personification, but rather actually being, and people use the term politically correct. That's not what we're talking about here.
No.
We are talking about, however, being considerate, being understanding, and representing their audience.
Exactly.
So you do start to see that actual change? Is that what you're
Right.
saying? Okay, it's only 2018. Took long enough. Slowly but surely, it's happening. I heard a little bird told me you're going to National Council for Independent Living. When's that going down?
Well, I am actually on the board of directors now for NCIL. It's NCIL, National Council for Independent Living. You can find out more on ncil.org. But they have a national conference every year in July. It actually happens to be where I met my husband. But this upcoming year, it is July 23rd through 26th, and it's in Washington, D.C. It's an absolutely awesome conference. I encourage anybody to go to it. It's a way to get actively involved and find out more about advocacy and more about disability rights. There are several different presentations that are done. We have people from the Administration on Community Living come in and talk to us, where we actually receive our federal funding, as well as different Centers for Independent Living staff. They do presentations on all kinds of things. So we have people come in and talk about parents with disabilities, so parents' rights, not the rights of the child with a disability, but if you are a parent with a disability, and the discrimination that they face and how to advocate for parents with disabilities. There's so many times that I hear from a mom that the first person who comes in to visit them after their child's born is not the doctor to see how things are going. It's the social worker and asking, well, how are you going to care for your child? And finding out, well, do you have a parenting plan? Are there people at home to help you? And that's not the way that it should be. We shouldn't focus on, well, how are you going to be able to do the things that everybody else can do? Versus, well, how's your general health? Your doctor should be the one to come visit you.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with that. I look at it in this way, and I'm sorry if I'm being insensitive. You have a lot of people, like for instance, a lot of people do not enjoy animal testing. They actually look at monkeys and they say, look, they're too much like us. We should treat them with respect. Mm-hmm. Why isn't that same mentality applied to, talking to someone regarding something as crucial as a parent to kid relationship? Mm-hmm. It's because you have a disability, regardless of whether it's mental or physical.
Right.
You should have some sort of rights as to what you do in a day-to-day, or maybe long-term.
Right.
It's humanity. It's not that humane sometimes. That's
correct.
A shame.
Correct.
It's a shame. Is there something other? I mean, you shared the website, and it'll be linked in the description. Is there something a college student here at KU right now could do to impact in a positive way?
Well, at KU, there's a student body, obviously, and I actually came to KU this morning to present at a couple of American government classes and getting ready for them to start their section on Congress. And so the reason I'm actually in Pennsylvania is because I came up to visit family after I spent the last week in D.C. And I was on the Hill talking to our legislators, not only my Washington State legislators, but Pennsylvania and Ohio and all kinds of stuff. I've actually had pizza delivered by Bob Casey Jr. While sitting outside during a protest at the Russell Senate building in Washington, D.C. And so I think the thing that's most important for your student body, and I apologize that it's not directly at Kutztown or at KU, but any student body, the age of individuals who are attending college nowadays, on average, is 18 to 24, and those are individuals who have not, in some cases, even had a chance to vote in a presidential election. They haven't had a chance to vote in any type of thing. And so the biggest, most important thing that I think that the student body needs to do is to get educated. Whether it's about disability rights, whether it's about gun violence, whether it's about whatever interests you. There's legislation about everything. And so find out about it. There is actually a website which is legis.state.pa.us, and that's so it's legis.state.pa.us. And that is the Pennsylvania State Legislature website, where you can go out and see the propositions and the bills that are being put out on the House and the Senate floor. You can see when the committee meetings are. You can find out the information about things that are going on here in Pennsylvania. On a federal level, there's congress.gov, and you can do the exact same thing. And if you're interested in finding out how your federal legislators voted, there's govtrack.us. So there's all of these different things that you can do to educate yourself, to find out, well, what is something that's important to me? What is something that's important to my family or to my group of colleagues to advocate for. If you are very interested in something, go out and find out more information about it. And, the thing that I really wanted to point out when I talked to the government classes was, don't think that as an individual, your voice isn't heard. For the last 2 years, for the last 3 years, I've been up on the Hill advocating against a particular bill which impacts disability rights. And, for the past 3 years, it hasn't gone through. But unfortunately, just recently, the federal House decided to pass H.R. 620. And it's unfortunately named the ADA Education and Reform Act. And I'm not going to stand here on my soapbox and tell you about it, but it really kind of negates 27 years of the ADA. And it's not law. But the reason that it passed the House is because the state representatives are telling us that they didn't hear from the disability community. And, it's unfortunate that sometimes people wait until the last minute, or they wait until they hear the cry, or they see something come across, Facebook or social media, and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm against that too. But that's why it's important to think about it now and understand, when you get in on the grassroots of things and be able to actually go talk to your legislators ahead of time, because you've educated yourself on the things that they're interested in and the things that they're for. I mean, you can go out and look at not only your state, but your federal legislators' voting records to see, well, hey, this is the district that they're from. Are they actually representing their district? Are they representing my rights? Are they voting in a way that I agree with? And whether they are or they aren't, if they are, thank them and tell them to continue to do that. But if they aren't, then call them and say, well, why aren't you doing this? And, sometimes I admit, I even made the mistake when I first started advocating. Oh, well, I'm not talking to the boss. I'm not talking to the legislator. Those people are great for pics. It's great for getting that picture on social media. And I have several selfies with legislators. And it's wonderful to put that out there that, hey, look, they're actually seeing you. but those aren't the people who actually do the work. So if you have an opportunity to meet with a staffer to get to know the people who work for your legislator, they're the ones who actually have the time to do the research. They're the ones that have the time to listen to the phone calls, to read the emails, to understand the impact that whatever policy or bill or decision that they're trying to make, how that's going to impact the population that it intends to impact.
Backtracking a little bit, you said the reason why they did not consider the disability community was because they didn't hear from them.
Exactly.
They blamed their constituents.
I'm not going to go so far as to say that they blame their constituents, because they actually said that they heard from the business owners. And so the business owners are their constituents as well. And so I'm not going to say that they blame. So I'm not going to use the word blame.
Politics.
But it has to do with whoever's the loudest voice. But I'm also going to point out, and I use this example in Dr. Richardson's class, but don't just think that you're one person and that you're not going to make a difference. I told a story in one of Dr. Richardson's classes about the fact that my husband, who is blind, he and I fly Alaska Airlines a lot. And we noticed that there was a recent news article that came out on social media about Virgin Atlantic having accessible in-flight entertainment systems. Because one of the things that my husband, Jim, and I do tend to be to educate people. So wherever we see something going on that, isn't necessarily right or accessible, we just tend to point it out. We don't get loud. We just try and take an opportunity to tell people, here's what's wrong with this. And so recently, Jim flew home from Pennsylvania, and he happened to mention to the lead flight attendant on the Alaska Airlines flight about, it's a shame that these in-flight entertainment systems aren't accessible. And so about a month later, he gets an email from the flight attendant, and the flight attendant says, well, don't think I'm ignoring you. I've taken this up the chain. I'm talking to the operations manager who's in charge of this to figure out, well, what can we do? So Jim goes ahead and he forwards the information from a podcast that we actually happen to listen to. That's the contact information about the accessible in-flight entertainment systems that Virgin Atlantic uses. And so, of course, he gets a thank you. And about 2 weeks later, he gets an email from the lead flight attendant saying, I just wanted to follow up and let you know that Alaska Airlines, starting in June or July, is going to be offering accessible in-flight entertainment systems. Now, that's a small little thing. And I'm not saying that Jim was responsible for it in its entirety, because I'm sure there have been plenty of people who've actually put the word out there for it. But he probably was the tipping point for them to say, okay, we're going to set a deadline and this is when we're going to do it by. So don't think that you as an individual don't make a difference, because it could mean one vote. I mean, the way that our federal legislation is right now, we've got midterm elections coming up. And if you are eligible to vote, vote. Don't sit idly by and think, oh, well, my vote doesn't count.
Yeah, someone else is going to vote. Yeah, I don't have to. Yeah.
It counts. And especially in Pennsylvania, now that you guys have a new district. Mm-hmm. So it's very imperative that you get out there and have your voice heard. They say that the collective makes differences, but no. For a collective to be a collective, you have to have individuals who make a choice to get involved. And so don't be that person who just says, oh, somebody else will make the decision for me, or, I don't need to lend my voice to this because it doesn't matter. I'm just one person. Get involved. Find out about it. This is your government. These are the laws that impact you. These are the things that rule your society and make it how things operate the way that they do. So don't stand idly by while other people make decisions for you.
I agree. I'm a representative on student government. I can't tell you how many times we have someone come in. It doesn't happen too much. Or we have someone speak at one of our meetings, and it's a problem. It's a problem, and we talk about it, and then next week we talk about it. Next week we keep talking about it. We keep realizing that this is a thing, this is being affected, and we start asking around to the students and to professors and to chairs, and this is a bigger problem than we thought. And it started just because one, maybe two student came in and said, look, this is something you should be talking about.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
it really makes a significant impact, and it's a very, very small scale here.
Right.
But what Kimberly just told you, and if you're a KU student in general, or maybe just a citizen who is pissed off about something that's happening in your community, find the people to talk to and talk to them.
Exactly.
A lot of people, I hear a lot of times, oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to start things. Oh, yeah, how do I do? Start. Start. That's the first thing you do.
Exactly. It's as simple as Googling. Google it. And I can guarantee you, if you Google Pennsylvania state legislators, you will see every single one of your legislators' websites pop up.
Yeah.
Click on them. There's a contact me button. Click on the contact me button. You can try and schedule a meeting for them while they're in district. You can try and send an email. They read these things. And again, it's not them who read them. It's the staffers. And that's why it's important to talk to the people who can actually get that information to your legislator. It doesn't necessarily have to be government either. If you want to see a change even here on campus, find out who you need to talk to. Tell them about it. Tell them why it's a problem. And that's one of the key things. That is one of the biggest key things, because you can't just go and say, this is a problem.
And then stop.
And stop.
Yeah.
You have to say, this is a problem because this is the impact that it creates or that it causes. And so therefore, you're actually providing the story behind why it's a problem. Unfortunately, all too often, people want to complain, and I said
Not
it
constructive.
Exactly. I said it in Dr. Richardson's class as well. Let me see if I say it correctly. Not all protesting is advocacy. Wait, no, it's backwards. Not all advocacy is protesting, but all protesting is advocacy.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I do see your point on that one. You mentioned it a little bit, the whole social media posts.
Exactly.
A little bit. It's not just it's for the issue, not the image.
Right.
Yeah.
There's all too often people will post all this stuff about, people who are shot by police officers, the gun violence situation. Okay, that's all well and good.
Yeah.
Share it. Fine. Share it. But that's not doing anything.
They'll
The
say,
legislators...
This is wrong.
Right. The legislators aren't looking at your social media. They're not looking at your Facebook feed. So sharing something is all well and good to let people know what your intentions are and to let them know what you support and what you don't support. But you're not telling the people who need to make a difference. And so if you have a problem and if you feel so inclined to share a post about something that is impactful to you as an individual, a group that you're involved in, or our nation, then you should feel as motivated to be able to call your legislator about it as well. I mean, there's several times that I know people who are on a first name basis with their in-state staffers for their legislators. And those are the people, when there's a question, when the boss says, well, hey, what should I do about this? I'm not sure. You get a phone call. If they know you and you provide them information and you're explaining things to them, you're giving them examples of how things are going to impact people. Those are the things that they rely on to help make decisions. A decision has to come from somewhere. They don't just pull it out of the air. And they pull it from the loudest voice.
Yeah. Some people think they do.
Right.
I would strongly suggest that. So, if there's no clear call to action, make one.
Exactly.
That's what you got to do.
Exactly.
If you sit there and go, yeah, you really got to do clear, concise, direct, be consistent, be explicit, be clear. That's the biggest thing you got to do.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And make your voice heard.
Yeah.
Make your voice heard. Just because you're one person doesn't mean you don't matter. Yeah. And you don't have to necessarily be part of whatever group you're trying to advocate for. If you feel strongly about something, then let other people know. There's national organizations for just about everything. I mean, you've got some groups right here on KU that are active doing that kind of stuff. And so find out who else does it. Because, again, a collective doesn't become a collective without individuals forming that. And so if you are an individual, and if you're an individual, get involved with another group, because then you're lending a louder voice. All of these people who go protest on Capitol Hill, you see people getting drug out of the lawmakers' offices. Those are some of my friends. But they're not just standing there screaming about, this is wrong, this is wrong. They also have people who are in there into their legislators' offices talking to the staffers and giving them hard and fast facts and information about the things that are coming down. So that way it's letting the legislators know in a very visual representation that this is wrong, this is not right, or yes, we are for this. But at the same time, you have to actually give them the facts and the information so that they can use that to make the choice on which way they're going to vote.
There's passion. There is credibility. There is significant feeling in this room. It's palpable almost. You care extremely, and I'm sorry for not finding the words.
It's okay.
It's rare to find someone who maybe it's because I'm in the environment I'm in. I meet a lot of people that complain. I meet a lot of people that, but no one really gets too constructive.
Right.
So it's refreshing to be able to communicate with someone like you, Kimberly, that is constructive, that actually puts pen to paper, that puts the voice to the walking, puts the walk to the talk, whatever you got. So, Kimberly, I want to take this moment and thank you for coming to KUR. Seriously.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. It's been an awesome opportunity. I've appreciated it very much.
Thank you. One more time, plug that conference. What's the dates again?
It is the National Council for Independent Living 2018 conference, and the dates are July 23rd through 26th in Washington, D.C. Not only do we have speakers and presenters, but we also walk to the Hill. We do a march to the Hill. We have a rally on the lawn of the Capitol, and then the majority of us disperse and actually go talk to our legislators.
Wow. So not only you got roles to fill, not only you get in the face, but you also go forward. You don't stop there. That's amazing.
Right.
Amazing. I love this. As a representative here on campus, this is incredible. Thank you for this opportunity.
Definitely.
For all
things,
things, thank you. For all things Kutztown University Radio, be sure to check us out on social media using hashtag KURadio. Kutztown-Live airs Tuesdays 3 to 4 p.m. right here on your radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.